use your God power to get everything you ever wanted and live the life of your dreams. The Master's Course. Copyright 2010 by Richard Lee McKim Jr. All rights reserved. Let the quest for knowing begin. Video example. The Day I Died, Vicki Noratuk's story. What is this video about? This video example is also from the very well done BBC documentary on near-death experiences mentioned above. This case is about Vicki Noratuk. Her story is told in this video excerpt. I have also included the story and experience as she tells it in her own words below. This video segment also includes some skeptical opinions. While I respect their right to have their own viewpoints or reality, I find it hard to refute visual descriptions, quote unquote, given by an otherwise blind person who has never seen before.
For best results, pause this video at this point here, and watch the video example mentioned in the segment. The links are located in the book chapter, and at the end of the book. If you are watching this online, you will find the link for this video example listed in the notes section. Then, after watching the associated video example, continue watching this video from here.
Vicki Noratuk, blind from birth, was in a severe car crash in January of 1973. After experiencing the same popping out of the body experience as other NDEers have reported and experienced, she had a weird and scary sensation. She could see. She saw her own body from a distance as she hovered at the ceiling above her bed. She had never perceived things at a distance because she had to touch them. Even in her dreams, she only had experiences of taste, sound, and touch and had no visual impressions at all. Once again, this example shows us that the true functioning and consciousness reside outside the body. While she still perceived herself in her body, she was unable to see. This was perfectly appropriate because if your eyes don't work, you are not supposed to see. However, we know that we are only limited because we think we are. If there are people who can see with their fingertips and their earlobes, she could see despite the condition of her eyes. This is proved when she pops out of her body and begins to see. Now the body's condition relative to her eyes no longer pertains. She could now see because there was no longer a justifiable reason that she could not. This proved that seeing was coming from her energy form. And it proved that her eyes and brain were never the source of sight anyway. She is still blind now that she is back in her body, even though she has irrefutable proof that she has the ability to see despite the condition of her body. Okay, let's look at this illustration. The non-physical energy field and consciousness separate from the body. Okay, so here we've got the non-physical being, the outline of blue, that's the blue field. That's the non-physical being energy field. And then we have the beliefs and meanings layer, which we've come to indicate as yellow. And then we have the physical body, which is green. Now, you see when she popped out of her body, the non-physical being and her which is her consciousness, and her beliefs and meanings popped out of the body. Here it says, notice, when she is out of her body, she is still conscious and in her immersed state, the yellow. She is still limited in her perceptions, even though she can now see and float in the air. Since the meaning of not being able to see was because of the body, then, once the body was left behind, she could see. Then it says below that, the body is not conscious. Since the consciousness has left the body, it no longer has the ability to respond in a conscious way. It is not processing any sensory data or memories. So in this case, the green body is still laying on the operating table. But the consciousness, non-physical being, with the beliefs and meanings have separated. Now the reason why I say that the beliefs and meanings have also separated is because while she was floating in the air, she knew who the doctors were. She knew what was going on. She knew who she was. She could still remember her memories. She could remember her childhood. Because of all those things, that's all the beliefs and meanings. She had with her her beliefs and meanings. That is from the immersed state. Because once you come out of immersion, then you have all knowledge. At this point, even though she was separate from the body, she was still in her immersed state, consciousness-wise. That's important. She was still in her immersed state. Now, also, once she separated from the body, she was hearing, she was seeing, which was new for her because she hadn't seen before. She was able to observe everything. Her conscious senses were with her out of the body. So that goes to show you that the senses were not operating in the body. They were operating in this non-physical realm. They were operating in the energy body. That's where they always were. It just so happened that the energy body was in with the physical body. So as the energy body was seeing, as the energy body was hearing, as the energy body was tasting, it seemed like it was the physical body doing it. But now that we see that the energy body is separate from the main body, and it's the one seeing, it's the one hearing, it's the one remembering, she has no memories from her view from the operating table. Because the body can't see anything. The body can't hear anything. The body can't taste or feel anything. So the body was unable to remember anything, to hear anything, to do anything, to see anything. Because the part that was doing all that anyway was the part that's separated out. That's the part that's floating up in the air, watching what's going on, checking it out. She recalled conversations exactly. But if you notice, all the memories and all the consciousness and all the experience of this event were from the perspective of the ceiling where she was, not from the perspective of the operating table. She probably has no memories whatsoever from the perspective of the operating table because she was probably anesthetized and all that before she was brought in. She was probably already out. So she never got a conscious view from that perspective. But when she popped out of her body, her conscious view moved to a new location. But the most important thing here is that everything that goes on with you, your senses, your memories, your tasting, your hearing, your seeing, your touching, all of that is not a function of the body. It only seems like it because when you're experiencing it from the body's perspective. What does this example show, and what does it mean? This video example is very important to our understanding of how our body and brain are separate from our consciousness and mind. And all of these personal stories, they were totally conscious and able to perceive what was going on, even though they weren't in their body at the time. Due to our immersion in this wonderful physical experience, we have every reason to think and believe that our eyes see and our brain thinks, because every one of our senses indicate that that is the way that it is. But it is clear that it is not the body that thinks, sees, and feels, but instead, those are functions of the mind and consciousness which are outside of and separate from the body. Vicki Noratuk's story in her own words. A Blind Woman's Near-Death Experience by Vicki Noratuk. Between 1947 and 1952, 50,000 babies were blinded by excess oxygen given to them in the newly developed airlock incubator. One of the clues to this tragedy was the discovery of the loss of peripheral vision among pilots breathing oxygen through air masks. I had been in the womb 22 weeks by December of 1950 when I was born at St. Luke Hospital in Pasadena, California. Weighing 3 pounds at birth, it was logical that I would be placed in one of the new incubators. Since then, for 43 years, I have seen no light, no shadows, nothing. The optic nerves to my eyes have been destroyed. When I dream with the same sensations I experience when I'm awake. There is no visual data. Other sensations such as touch and sound. But I have seen as you see. Twice I nearly died, and on those occasions, for the first time in my life, I saw. I left my body and saw. This is an account of my second near-death experience. On February 2nd, 1973, I was working as a singer and pianist at a restaurant in Seattle, Washington. It was 2 a.m. The owner, afraid of offending a drunk couple that had offered me a ride home, overruled my objections and insisted that I accept their offer. He refused to open up his office so I could get some change for the payphone to call a cab. He left, and no one else was going my way. I reluctantly accepted the ride. As we drove along, the driver mentioned he was seeing double. The VW bus weaved through the streets. Near the base of Queen Anne Hill, there was a squealing of tires and we spun out of control. The driver's wife yelled, "Oh my God, we're crashing!" Everything became very slow. I screamed. That was my last conscious, in-the-body awareness. Dazed and disoriented, I felt myself leave my body through my mouth. Time still seemed stretched and elongated. I was rising into the air above the street, confused. I saw my body briefly. There was an uncertain moment when part of me wanted to go back into it, but another part of me felt so neat being out. Then I returned. It was like returning to your house when you forget something. I don't remember the trip to Harborview Hospital. My first awareness in the emergency room was being up near the ceiling. I could see again. Through this near-death experience, I was in a state of stunned awe from seeing. In fact, it was so foreign to me that it was a continuous complication in my efforts to cope. But it was also like a foreign language that you don't understand, but that you ache to hear more of. Below me was a body on a cart I wasn't sure was mine. I was shocked and aghast. The hair length was mine, and a lot of it had been shaved off. This may not make sense, but it took me a long time to grow, and I loved my hair. It was like losing an important part of me. Blood caked the skull. Nearby, I clearly saw a female member of the medical team. I felt drawn to her, and I can't explain why. But I had a great need to get her to understand me. Then I heard a male voice say that there was blood on my eardrum, and that I might be deaf. "I'm not deaf! I'm not deaf!" I was screaming at him. Maybe she could tell him. "Don't you hear me? I'm right over here." At this point, while the visual impressions floored me, they were secondary to my desire to communicate verbally. because that's the main way I've navigated through life. Then the vegetative state. I yelled at her, I'm not in a vegetative state. I was so frustrated and angry because I was yelling with every ounce of my strength I had, and it was like I didn't exist. I just wanted to get out of there. Almost immediately, as if in response to my thought, I was drawn up, sort of vroom, right through the ceiling, and then the hospital rising through space. I saw lights. I don't know what they were from, but I didn't care because I felt so free. I was giddy with the ease of movement I felt as I rose. I felt like screaming and shouting with intoxication. This might sound crazy, but it reminds me of the feeling a puppy might have when it rolls over the grass and doesn't care where it's rolling. In the distance, I heard the most beautiful sound, like wind chimes. It contained every single note you could imagine, from the lowest to the highest, all blended together. As a musician, I was intrigued. There were so many different tones that I didn't know were possible. I was awed. Sucked head first into a dark tunnel, I was drawn by the wind toward a distant light that grew. There was a whooshing, airy feeling, as though great, big, monstrous fans were drawing me. The tube was comfortably wide. Occasionally, I passed what looked like vents or windows in the sides of the tube. Through these I could see other beings, both ahead of me and behind me in parallel tubes. They seemed to be expressing the same amazement I was experiencing. Inside, I felt warmth throughout my being. As I neared the end of the tunnel, the light became brilliant. Just before I reached the end, I could hear people singing. It was like all the hymns you've ever heard sung at once and blending together harmoniously. I noticed that there were no hymns about Jesus dying or sad songs of blood and pain. These were songs of praise and jubilation. As I listened, I could pick out an individual piece. Somehow their combined singing was beautiful, not horrible. It was like what could be made in order there could be made in order here. The jubilation filled me. My exit from the tube can be best described as rolling out into grass in a balmy, bright summerland scene of trees where there were thousands of people singing, laughing, and talking. Some played what sounded like string instruments. Flowers were everywhere in different varieties, and I still recall a near jasmine scent. Both the flowers and the birds I observed in the trees seemed to have light around them. I also noticed that even among flowers and birds of the same kind, some had more light than others. At intervals, ornate pillars supported what looked like roofs, creating park shelters. In the distance, a huge gate glowed, the brightest object in my field of vision. Then I saw Debbie and Diane coming toward me from the right, and Mr. and Mrs. Zilk approaching me from the left. I had been very close to Debbie and Diane at the Oregon State School for the Blind. Debbie had died from a hydrocephalic condition when I was 10. Diane had drowned in the bathtub next to my room from a muscle spasm 4 years earlier. Even blind kids can be cruel, and because Debbie was quite overweight, moved ponderously, and didn't talk very well, and because Diane would curse frequently at people, they were both shunned and made fun of by other kids. I felt sorry for both of them and reached out to them because of that. Miss Zilk had been an elderly, next-door neighbor who babysat me when my grandmother had to work. She had been a real sweet woman who went along with a lot of my imaginative playtime stuff. Debbie and Diane moved towards me gracefully. Both of them seemed to be healed inside or somehow made better. I could feel them reaching out to me with love. Diane seeming to have an almost desperate desire to say something. In a place where time may have no meaning, There was then an instant when I knew everything, when everything made sense. It was like this place was where I could find the answers to all my questions about life, about the planets, about God, about everything. Suddenly, I intuitively understood math and science. And I don't know about math. I haven't asked about calculus. Now I understand it. Languages became unimportant. I knew them. Even without asking questions, answers were imparted about things I've always wondered about. I had always been troubled about the Trinity. Now I was aware that the Father was what you might call the being source aspect of God. The Son was the doing aspect, and the Holy Spirit was the imparter, the bringer of knowledge. I was aware that these three aspects of God, while separate, were also one, in the same way that a husband and wife are separate, yet one. As Debbie and Diane were approaching, now almost close enough to touch, I sensed a boundary across which I could not go. Then Christ appeared. His light filled my vision. Holding out a raised hand towards me, he said very definitely, "No," blocking me and them from coming closer to each other. It would be like someone preventing you from going over a cliff or passing a certain point beyond which you wouldn't be able to return. His face was strong and kind. He wore a beard, and his hair was long. His gown, open at the chest, had a sash around the waist. I'm describing a form, but the incredible light he gave off outweighed it. Part of me could hardly stand to be around it, but yet I could stand it. It was like the light came out of his body directly, and he was made out of it. I was too, but my light was not nearly as intense as his. Debbie and Diane also gave off light, but with Christ, it was all around him, especially around his head, where the light was circular, and where he had arms or spokes of light extending like those you might see from a star. Around the rest of his body, the light was more uniform. His eyes were piercing, yet tender. You almost wanted to look away, but then you couldn't. He could see everything about me, clear beyond everything, even more than I could see or know. It was kind of scary, but so totally known, exposed, and yet accepted and loved. Yet I wanted nothing more than to be a part of it. It's kind of like songs about people being in love, where part of them wants to run away and part of them doesn't. "Well, hello," he said, and embraced me. I didn't ever want to be away from him. Ever. I just wanted him to envelop me somehow, and not to be separated from him. I was so excited about the knowledge I just found that I felt like I was bubbling and tripping over myself, trying to communicate it to him with a kind of thought transference. And he said, "Isn't it wonderful? Everything is beautiful here, and it fits together, and you'll find that. But you can't stay here now. It's not your time. You have to go back." Then he said, "Watch this." And then I saw my whole life, from birth to the current moment. I knew he was with me, but my awareness of everything else around me disappeared. In this process, I actually observed myself, as well as being aware of the thoughts and feelings of myself and others involved in every incident of my life. Christ left it to me to assess things, to arrive at conclusions myself. I became aware that I was being harder on myself than he was. In one incident, when I was 9 or 10, Sharon, my roommate at the school for the blind, showed me a new dress her mother had just made for her. When she left the room, I ripped all the buttons and the lace off. I was angry because I wanted to be cared about the way her mother cared about her. Now, when we observed myself doing this in the life review, Christ said to me, "Yeah, that wasn't too cool. But you made it right, though." And Christ laughed as we now observed myself apologizing and hugging Sharon later. During this entire encounter with Christ, I believe he employed my vernacular as a way of relating to me. His laughter was hearty and supportive. Thinking about his reaction to that incident has helped me be less somber and uptight about things my children have done wrong. Then he asked me, "What have you learned from your life?" I answered that I thought it was important to be honest. Then Christ said to me, "You have to learn and teach more people about loving and forgiving. Whether people deserve it or not is not the point. You shouldn't try to select those who you think should be forgiven and those who shouldn't." He was referring to a tendency on my part to forgive only those who had apologized to me. He also told me before I left that it was going to be hard, but to remember what I had learned. Then there was absolutely nothing. For how long, I have no idea. All of a sudden, I felt a heavy and full pain. I eventually awoke in the hospital to find I had a skull fracture, a concussion, a neck injury, a back injury, and a leg injury. The things I have been through since my near-death experience have been unbelievably hard, but I have learned a lot from them. I am learning about separating the sin from the sinner. I am learning about judging less and letting go of some of my past sense of smugness and superiority. Finally, I'm learning to care for myself enough that I no longer allow the negative thoughts of others to drag me down. As Christ said, "The path has been hard, but in walking it, I feel I have grown." That is the end of her story. In most cases, after moving out of their body and seeing themselves from outside of their own bodies, they report moving into a bright light, and that as they enter the light, they feel profound love and total acceptance. This is the beginning of their emergence from the state of immersion. As you begin to become more and more aware of the whole picture, you experience what some call total knowing, universal knowledge, and awareness of everything. This is the experience of going into the light or going through the tunnel. It is simply the visual experience of their own consciousness expanding and regaining the all-knowing state as they become unimmersed. Some people are able to retain some of that greater knowing even after they have returned to the physical experience in the body. Others, once again, lose all of that greater knowing as they become re-immersed back into their physical experience. Many people who have had these near-death experiences have experienced expanded abilities, special insights, been able to see even though they have never seen before, and many other extraordinary talents. However, they believed that it was only conditional, meaning that it was only possible during the near-death experience. Nothing could be further from the truth. Every ability that has been described and experienced by the near-death experience has been experienced and reported by people who regularly have out-of-body experiences during sleep or meditation, during altered states of consciousness, or due to other means as well. These experiences of the NDEers are not unique. The huge advantage that the NDEer has over the ordinary person is that they know that it is real. It is so much easier for them to alter their own reality than for you and me, because they have already experienced it. However, they don't realize this, and they think that it is a one-time event and not repeatable. So it is their own beliefs that prevent them from exploring and developing this ability.
To continue, go to How to Use Your God Power, chapter number 10, segment number 39. Let your quest for knowing continue. Options. click on the tan arrow to go to the main course menu and guide with links to all course chapters, excerpts, and special reports. Or, click on the blue arrow to start watching the video, How to Use Your God Power. Or, click on the green arrow to start watching the video, The Meaning of Meaning. Up next, special video options. And, hear how to download the course e-books, MP3 audios, videos, and the slideshows. Right now, for free. Now switching to the special video options menu. One moment please. Options menu. Click on your selection number, or wait for the free download information, coming up next. "15 seconds till we switch to the next page with the free download information. Pause the video now if you need more time to review the available selections." Now switching to the free download information. One moment please. Download all of chapter number 1 for free. What is your God power and how to use it? Available download formats include the Adobe PDF, ebook, with the transcript and closed caption files as well, MP3 audiobook, Windows Media Video, slideshows, Flash Movie, and iPod MP4. To get these free downloads, go to the link listed below. Special excerpts, Secrets of Life and Death. What is incarnation? Download this special report for free. Available download formats include the Adobe PDF, ebook, MP3 audiobook, Windows Media Video, slideshows, Flash Movie, and iPod MP4. To get these free downloads, go to the link listed below. The 3 biggest lies of all time, and why believing them could kill you. Download this special report for free. Available download formats include the Adobe PDF, ebook, MP3 audiobook, Windows Media Video, slideshows, Flash Movie, and iPod MP4. To get these free downloads, go to the link listed below. Chapter 5, Special Excerpts Number 1. Attracting What You Want. Understanding Attraction, including special techniques. Download this special report for free. Available download formats include the Adobe PDF, ebook, MP3 audiobook, Windows Media Video, slideshows, Flash Movie, and iPod MP4. To get these free downloads, go to the link listed below. How to Use Your God Power. The Master's Course. By Richard Lee McKim Jr. The entire course is available at Amazon.com. in DVD-ROM format. 40 CD audiobook, and an 18 DVD set. Delivery by postal service, and by immediate download as well. Go to Amazon.com, or use the direct link below, to get all the How to Use Your God Power course materials and products. Let your quest for knowing continue.